What if I told you that the great cathedrals of Europe were built by ghosts? Don't laugh yet. Today we're proving it with simple mathematics, and by the end, you'll question everything you thought you knew about history. Stay until the end, because we're going to show you how to verify this mathematical proof yourself, so you can see with your own eyes that the numbers don't lie. Our investigation begins in Reims, France, home to one of the most incredible structures on Earth, the Reims Cathedral. Stone vaults soar toward the sky. The facade holds thousands of sculptures, each a masterpiece. It's a symphony in stone, frozen in time. The official story? Construction began in 1211 and was completed in just 80 years. Now pause. Imagine a world without electricity, trucks, cranes, or computers. A world where horses provided power and hammers were cutting-edge technology. In those conditions, could you build this masterpiece in 80 years? Even 200 years seems impossible. We're asked to believe construction was perfected from day one, while everything else remained primitive. But Reims isn't alone. These colossal structures stand worldwide like silent accusations against our modern age. We, supposedly 800 years more advanced, can't understand the most basic question. How? Every stone fits with flawless precision. Every vault calculated to withstand centuries of pressure. This demands profound knowledge of geometry, physics, and material science. Disciplines supposedly in their infancy. We're told stories of people writing by candlelight, living in cold huts, fighting with swords. Yet somehow they erected buildings that challenge modern engineers, often faster than we build skyscrapers today. Let's ask practical questions. Where were the quarries? How were blocks shaped without machines? Most critically, how were they transported? Without railways or trucks, moving a single multi-ton block is monumental. They needed hundreds of thousands. Historical chronicles are silent on these details. No records of transport routes, no evidence of thousands of workers who needed food, shelter, clothing. We're expected to believe a civilization lacking basic technology created logistical chains rivaling modern complexity. This paradox repeats from cathedral to cathedral across Europe. History throws dates at us and demands faith. But what if these dates are attempts to fit inexplicable artifacts into a fabricated timeline? What if these structures aren't products of their time, but legacies of something far greater? The deeper we look, the more the official version cracks. And there's one suspicious pattern that appears too often to be coincidence. A pattern involving fire that may unlock everything. After analyzing hundreds of ancient buildings, we find a disturbing template. Nearly every great stone cathedral supposedly was built on the site of an older wooden church destroyed by fire. Reims is no exception, built on ashes of a predecessor that burned just 1 year before construction began. This scenario repeats dozens, even hundreds of times across Europe. Isn't that convenient? A pre-written template inserted to fill gaping voids. Why would millennium-lasting stone buildings need fiery backstories? This narrative solves problems for the official timeline. It explains why massive construction suddenly began. It creates an illusion of continuity, linking inexplicable masterpieces to primitive periods. But, mathematically, this many fateful fires followed by construction booms looks like outright fabrication. If the fire stories are facades, who were the supposed creators? Official history names Jean d'Orbay as Reims Cathedral's architect. But learning more hits a wall. Who was he? Where did he gain knowledge centuries ahead of his time? Where are his blueprints, calculations, students? None exist. His biography is vague assumptions and references to other projects that deepen confusion. He's credited with buildings supposedly founded in the 6th century, then 600 years later begins other churches. This creates not a real person, but a mythical character whose name was written into history to give authorship to an anonymous masterpiece. Did he build it at all, or did he simply find it, his name attached to integrate the ancient structure into a new timeline? Such phantom architects, whose existence is supported only by the buildings themselves, appear throughout history. Another crack in the foundation. A disturbing picture emerges. Technologically inexplicable buildings. Suspiciously frequent fire stories. Enigmatic architects whose biographies collapse under scrutiny. This could be blamed on lost documents, if not for one thing. All this is circumstantial evidence. The real crushing blow isn't hidden in stone or manuscripts. It's hidden in numbers, in population data provided by historians themselves. There's one area where you cannot lie, one system that obeys strict laws: mathematics. Historians can invent stories about fires and genius architects, but they can't argue with mathematics. And now it will reveal a truth that will shock you. The time has come for the decisive experiment. We'll set aside legends and turn to the impartial language of numbers. Our method is simple, based on official public data. We'll take population growth statistics from well-documented periods, the last 200 to 250 years. Consider England. Since 1800, its population grew from 9 million to over 65 million, a colossal leap. Spain's population increased almost 20 million in just 70 years. Now we'll perform reverse calculation, not into the future, but into the past. We'll apply the same mathematical model to see what world population should have been in those so-called dark ages. We'll use their numbers, their mathematics, to check their history. This simple arithmetic leads to results that can only be described as a demographic bombshell, completely shattering the familiar picture painted since school. Applying recorded population change rates, numbers shrink catastrophically. Rewind 100 years to 1900, population is no longer in billions. But that's just the start. By 1886, according to calculations, Earth had only 928 million people. By 1817, just 200 years ago, that drops to 314 million, several times less than official sources claim. By 1748, only 106 million remain on entire Earth. That's modern Japan's population spread across all continents. Now a truly massive step, the year 1610. According to our mathematical model based on official growth rates, world population would have been just 11.8 million people, fewer than live in Moscow today. This during an era of supposed great geographical discoveries, empire building, and large-scale wars. But the most devastating blow lands on the very period where our investigation began. We're approaching the 1200s, when foundations of greatest Gothic cathedrals, including Rheims, were supposedly laid. Continuing calculations with relentless logic, we arrive at a shocking, unthinkable result. At the moment when thousands across Europe were supposedly enthusiastically building stone masterpieces, Earth's entire population would have been about 18,100 people. Let me repeat, 1,800 people on the entire planet. The population of a small town or modern residential complex. This is where official history collides with mathematics and shatters. We're told hundreds of architectural marvels were being erected worldwide at this time, but who built them? If the entire planet had fewer people than attend a single football match today, who quarried and moved millions of tons of stone? Who developed complex architectural plans? Who fed these builders? Mathematics gives a clear answer: impossible. The historical version claiming a virtually non-existent population was more advanced in construction than we are today collapses under simple arithmetic. If people of that time couldn't physically build this, the main question arises: who did? Mathematics has destroyed the alibi of official history, showing that in the 13th century, there was simply no one to build the cathedrals. This shocking conclusion leaves only one logical alternative. If these buildings weren't built by people of that time, they were built by someone else long before them. The answer, however radical, we're dealing with legacy of a previous, far more advanced global civilization. Medieval people in subsequent eras didn't build these masterpieces from scratch. They found them, inhabited them, perhaps tried repairing them. Ancient drawings and photographs from the mid-1800s serve as silent witnesses. In these images, we see the same medieval cathedrals and ancient temples, but they don't look new. They're already standing, ancient, majestic, often half-buried in soil, speaking of past cataclysm. Surrounding them is primitive 19th century life, people in simple clothes, horse-drawn carts. The contrast between the technological level of people in photos and architectural perfection of buildings is staggering. These aren't photographs of construction, they're photographs of people reclaiming ruins, a world recovering from something global. These buildings are silent artifacts of a bygone era, one later called Tartaria, or given another name. But if this is legacy of a single civilization, it must have common features, a recognizable signature left by real builders. And it does. All over the world, from Europe to Asia, we find the same symbols on these ancient buildings' facades. One striking example, the griffin, a mythical creature official, history scatters across different cultures. Yet we see its depiction rendered in similar style on buildings separated by thousands of miles. For example, on an old Athens building captured in an 1860s photograph. These aren't random coincidences. This is an architectural language, a unified code proving these structures had a single cultural source. These symbols are like signatures left by a civilization later erased from history books. We're told stories of disparate primitive peoples supposedly arriving at similar architectural solutions independently. But facts speak to the contrary, the existence of a single global culture possessing technologies we still cannot fully replicate. All these buildings are links in the same chain, parts of a vast global system we're not meant to know about. Visual evidence and recurring symbols support our theory, but our most powerful, irrefutable tool is mathematics. It's already shown us that population in the 1200s was effectively zero, making large-scale construction impossible. This conclusion alone overturns everything we thought we knew, but if the math is right, it pushes us toward an even more frightening fundamental conclusion. It points to a point of origin in the recent past, a moment when almost no humans existed on the planet. The thought is both fascinating and terrifying. It means our current civilization is very young, and all history before a certain point is either fabrication or misinterpreted chronicle of the previous world, the world of true builders. We're on the verge of a discovery that could change absolutely everything. Our calculation for the 13th century exposed the impossibility of the official version, the stone that started an avalanche. But why stop? If the mathematical model is correct, it should work as we go further, taking us deeper into the past where historians fear to look with calculator in hand. Let's not be afraid. Let's take our mathematical experiment to its logical, shocking conclusion. Let's calculate what date this countdown leads to and see what lies at that final point. We've brought our mathematical experiment to a critical point, exposing the absurdity of official 13th century history. But we won't stop. Now we take the final step and gaze into the abyss this calculation opens. Continuing our countdown with the same relentless rate of population decline, we race back through centuries. After the 1200 AD mark, where only 1,800 people existed on Earth, numbers melt away. The year 1900, 800. With each step, humanity becomes more ghostly, its planetary presence approaching statistical error. Then we reach the threshold of the 600s AD. Mathematics based on official demographic data delivers its final merciless verdict. In the year 600 AD, Earth's entire population would have been 3 people. This isn't metaphor or exaggeration. It's the direct inevitable result of calculation based on numbers historians themselves provide. We've reached the end point, a mathematical zero beyond which there is nothing. This figure, 3 people on the planet, presents a fundamental choice, a fork with 2 paths, each completely changing our understanding. The first path, take this literally. This would mean humanity appeared sometime in the mid-7th century AD, and all history before, ancient Rome, Greece, Egyptian pyramids, is fiction. This option is so absurd it can be dismissed immediately. That leaves only the second path. If math doesn't lie, but its result is absurd, then the initial premise must be wrong. We've assumed human history is a continuous, smooth growth process. But what if it's not? What if in the recent past there was a break in this timeline? This calculation means one thing. Very recently in our history, something colossal happened. A global event that almost completely wiped out the planet's population and erased collective memory of the past. Our mathematical model breaks down because it's trying to look beyond the event horizon of this cataclysm into the world that existed before it. This idea of a global cataclysm, of a great reset, is the master key that fits every lock, opening all doors we've been knocking on. If we assume such an event occurred relatively recently, perhaps in the 18th century, around the symbolic date of 1776, then all inexplicable paradoxes instantly fall into place. The incredible cathedrals and castles aren't constructions of dark ages, but surviving heritage of a highly developed pre-cataclysm civilization. Lost construction. Technologies weren't lost in antiquity. They disappeared along with the world of their creators during the reset. The population mystery. Rapid growth of the 19th and 20th centuries isn't continuation of an ancient trend, but a demographic explosion of survivors rebuilding their numbers from nearly zero. And the entire official history we know is a chronicle written after the disaster, designed to explain the new world and incorporate incomprehensible ruins of the past, labeling them primitive medieval buildings and inventing vague legends of phantom builders. Therefore, all these cathedrals, castles, and palaces aren't legacy of primitive medieval people. They're silent witnesses of a world that came before us, a world hidden from us. They stand as irrefutable evidence that our civilization isn't the first on this planet, and that our history is much shorter and more tragic than we've been led to believe. The numbers and facts are right in front of you. They were always here, waiting for us to pay attention. But I promised you something at the beginning of this video. I said I would show you how to verify this mathematical proof yourself. And unlike other channels that just expect you to take their word for it, I'm going to give you the actual tools to become an investigator yourself. Here's what you need to do. First, go to any official source, World Bank, United Nations Population Database, or your country's Census Bureau. These are the same sources historians use, so there's no dispute about the data. Pull up the population figures for any country over the last 200 years. You'll see the growth rate clearly documented. Now comes the simple part. Take that average annual growth rate, usually between 1% and 2% for most developed nations. Open a basic spreadsheet or even use a calculator. Start with today's population and work backward, dividing by the growth factor for each year. The formula is simple. Previous population, current population, 1 plus growth rate. Do this for 100 years, then 200, then 500. Watch what happens to the numbers. You don't need to be a mathematician. You don't need special software. You just need basic arithmetic and the courage to follow the numbers wherever they lead. And here's what makes this so powerful. You can do this for any country, any region, any time period where we have reliable modern data. The result is always the same. The further back you go, the more absurd the official timeline becomes. Try it with France. Try it with England. Try it with Spain. Every single time, you'll hit that same mathematical wall, a wall that proves the population necessary to build these ancient structures simply didn't exist. I've put together a simple spreadsheet template that you can download. The link is in the description below. It has the formulas already set up. All you need to do is plug in the official population data from any source you trust, and let the math speak for itself. Share your results in the comments. Tell me what year your calculation reaches zero population. Compare notes with others. Become part of this investigation. This is what separates us from other channels. We're not asking you to believe us. We're asking you to verify it yourself. We're giving you the method, the tools, and the data sources. Because when you see these numbers with your own eyes, when you perform the calculation yourself, it becomes impossible to unsee. You'll carry this knowledge with you, and no official explanation will ever satisfy you again. The truth is hidden in plain sight, buried in the very numbers they provide us. And now, you have the key to unlock it. So, go ahead, run the numbers, prove it to yourself, and when you do, come back and let us know what you found. This investigation is just beginning. If you want to dive deeper into what else our history is hiding, subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell, because we're not stopping here. We're going to tear apart every official story that doesn't add up, one mathematical proof at a time. And with your help, with your own investigations, we're building a community of people who refuse to accept lies disguised as history. The numbers don't lie. Now you can prove it.